Hello and welcome back to the Broadrun podcast, episode 22. This episode today is going to be Get to Know Your Coach. So without further ado, this podcast is no longer going to be taken by me. It's going to be taken over by my reliable assistant, Mr. Edward. So Ed, it's all yours.
Cheers, mate. Thank you. It's a big responsibility, I think, this week. But no, I think it's a good exercise to do. I think you do a lot of your coaching, through on True Training Peaks and online, and people across the world, as well as looking after people here in Dubai. So I think sometimes it's good to know the person who's programming you these awful sessions and putting you through the pain. So I mean, let's go back to basics. Let's go. Where did your let's not even talk about running first. Let's talk about your sporting journey. Where did that begin for you?
So for me, originally I was always massively into rugby. So all things rugby, pretty much growing up. And, I even played rugby like while I was in the Navy. So I just, was pretty much playing full-time sport more or less for most of the year. So basically, that was me just telling my dog to be quiet, by the way. So basically, yeah. What it was focused all things on rugby, and obviously if anybody knows anything about rugby, I was a prop forward for like majority of my career. So that's obviously not something when you think about a typical runner, it's not really somebody who you would consider to be a sort of good runner. So yeah, that was me. And then sort of to take you on to a bit about how my running career, I eventually had to stop playing rugby due to a blood clotting illness. Which meant that I could no longer play any contact sports. So I sort of left myself lost in the wilderness for, a couple of, say about a year and a half, didn't really know what I was going to do, always sort of really enjoyed sport, always dabbled in a bit of weightlifting, and I carried on my weightlifting and powerlifting stuff, but, wasn't really getting out the same sort of feelings that I got towards my rugby career. So I sort of, it wasn't until I was challenged by my flatmate to sort of run my first ever 10K race that I started to get into all things running.
So that was the first, almost like a dare sort of thing. 10K was the first time you competitively pulled on your trainers and went for a time.
Yeah, I mean, I say that, but during the time in the military, I actually had a point of reflection the other day when I was thinking, I was like, I never used to run. I mean, we literally used to run all the time when I was in the military. Like it would be, you would have to do obviously your fitness tests. You would have to do running and basic training. Like when I started and went to basic training, I was like pretty fit during that time. I was going to say extremely fit, but there'll be a few lads from the basic training time that like, you weren't that good. But, we had a laugh with it and still like trained, and obviously rugby fit, as you'll know yourself, is a lot different to your typical running fitness. Like I could run rings around myself at my fittest while I was in the Navy now, just because obviously I'm trained specifically for doing running. But this my flatmate Rachel, I think she was just as an attempt to sort of pick me out of down in the dumps of just sort of not really knowing what I was doing career-wise and not really knowing what I was doing sport-wise. And she said, right, well, I'm doing this 10K, let's see if you can do it. And then me being like, pretty big-headed, I just said, right, well, I mean, obviously I'm going to win because, it'll be easy. And she ended up beating me by about 4 minutes or something on this 10K. Which is obviously just, it was really good actually thinking about it. I did a little post about it on my Instagram at the time, but I think I was maybe like, 100 and something, 110 kilos or something, extremely unfit. My first ever training run that I did, for it, like I had weeks to prepare for this first ever training run. I said, right, I'm going to go out and do a 7K. I don't know where I got that arbitrary number from. I just said, I'm going to do a 7K. And I went out the front door. I ran out my apartment in Glasgow at the time. I ran down the street. I turned the traffic lights at the corner. And then as I turned right, I was completely in the red, completely finished. And I was burst. I thought, I cannot believe this. And I looked down at my watch and it was like 700 meters. And I was like, you've got to be joking me. I was so I sat down on a wall for like maybe 10 minutes. And that's when my good friend from rugby, I hardly knew anyone in this area of Glasgow. And I sat down on the wall, trying to get my breath back. And my friend Alan pulls up at the traffic lights in his car. What are you doing here? Sitting there, potting laughing. I thought, I've not seen anybody in Glasgow for months. And all of a sudden I go out for a run And I think that sort of spurred me on, to just sort of pick things up more seriously.
Yeah. I mean, let's sort of go back. You talked about rugby and obviously I've had a very big background in rugby as well. And, being a prop forward, at your peak, what we're talking about, what were you cashing in at weight-wise?
So like for the sort of leading up towards the Army Navy game, the coaches, I was around 115 kilos. Yeah. And the coaches had said to me, like, really the tight head for the Army at the time, I think he maybe played for Bristol or something. But he was like, listen, this guy's like 124 kilos. Like, you need to be, for a loose head, like, we need you to be 118 to 120. So for that final 3 months of camp, like, I was just going like absolutely crazy on the calories. I think I was on like 5,800 calories a day. Like, no less, like at every hour eating, and just constantly trying to get to that. And obviously at the time, like, I was a bit of a strong bugger as well. So I had like putting up some pretty decent numbers.
Come on then, reveal, just give the fans what they want.
Yeah, so we're probably looking at like 250 deadlift, 150 bench, and then like I did a 200 squat like once, but it was probably about 195 standard squat, which isn't bad.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, because even this morning I was having a conversation with some of the members, and I was explaining to them how big you were, and I'm not saying that's not in a derogatory way. You're incredibly you're powerlifting. You were a prop forward for the Navy, mm-hmm. and they couldn't quite comprehend, i.e. the weight difference. Because I mean, what weighing now,
84,
which is if you tell someone, right, you're going to go out and run and you're going to put a backpack on and put 20 kilos in, you're going to notice it very quickly.
And the rest, yeah. No, exactly. Yeah, it's literally exactly that. Like, I'm almost carrying like half of another person, like half a professional's runner's weight I had on top of my back. Yeah. So like obviously that does make a big difference to be actually now like. I wouldn't say it's something that maybe I was a bit naive to while I was playing rugby, but like rugby fit necessarily isn't life fit.
Not at all.
And I think that you sort of like. You look at some of obviously the peak athletes, the guys that are sort of playing in the backs and wingers and stuff. These guys are absolutely athletic, but they're lying to themselves if they say that like, or the forwards, they're lying to themselves if they say that they're in like good sort of metabolic healthy shape. Like most of them are probably classed as like obese class 2. Like they're pretty big, and now obviously upon reflection, I'm now like, well, yeah, that was me. Like. I was in that category, but I mean, it was good crack. Like, I mean, there's almost nothing like it. The camaraderie of doing that sort of that rugby stuff.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, likewise, I've played rugby since I was 5 years old, and I think it was when I started playing a bit more seriously and academy stuff came in. I thought I was in okay shape and size, and the first thing the academy director said to me says, "You're gonna have to get yourself in the gym, lad, and get eating." And it was the first thing they said to me. And I was a scrum half, and I think again as well, you kind of kid yourself, isn't it? Because you are, in relatively speaking, in a fit position. But if someone, if you're mid season and someone says, "Right, go run a half marathon," it's just you ain't doing it. Yeah. You're built for sort of 2 minute, 3 minute intervals, and then a big prop drops the ball.
That was more 30 seconds, lad. Yeah, 30 seconds, walk to the scrum, 15 seconds scrum. It's just like crazy. Yeah, you're right. It's totally different.
So so you finish the 10K, you're absolutely, you're blown out of every orifice.
205 average heart rate after first 500 meters.
Which is insane for people that are, have a relatively good understanding of where your heart rate should be. So, you finish the race, you get your medal, you get your picture. Is that the moment where you were thinking, this is it, running's the one? Or was it, where?
No, not really. I decided to sort of set my sights on like a local 10K. So that was around the October time, and decided like, right, give a proper crack at this, go back at it like the next March. At the next local 10K, and then sort of quickly realised like that I wasn't really in the best shape to be running, if that makes sense. I was probably too heavy, I was probably too unfit, so I was probably only be able to train like maximum, say, twice a week. So I was like thinking all things running, and like I'm a bit like focused. Like once I get sort of stuck on something, I'll really like go into the weeds and learn all about the training, how to do it. So obviously most of the training I read about, I contacted one of my good friends, Fergus, who runs his own coaching thing, and said, what do I need to do? He said, you need to be doing polarized training, you need to be doing easy training. Started to realize that I can't run zone 2 runs because I'm in zone 2 at a brisk walk. So I figured what the best thing to do would be go out and get a bike. So I already had a bike, but go out and sort of start hitting the road cycling for a lot of my sort of low impact endurance stuff, and then still running sort of 2-3 times a week with a focus of coming back on the vengeance on the 10K.
And how was the vengeance? Dare we ask?
The vengeance was sweet. We came back and I went from like the first sort of time that I did for the 10K, which I was still really pleased with, by the way. And I know there's people who would probably give their left arm for this, but like for me, that was the best effort I could do at the time. I did 58 minutes for my first ever one. So to get under the hour, like I was completely like happy. But I mean, I genuinely could not walk for 5 days. Like I was like dead. And then I came back, and I think the next time I did it, I think I was like around 52 or 53. Sort of like, there. And then not soon after that, once the training was able to ramp up and I was able to get the volume, the times, quickly came down after that.
Which is huge. And I think as well, you touch on a good point of, the zone 2, there's the mythical zone 2 training. And I think I was exactly in the same boat. There's so many times when I'm running and I'm looked down at my watch or I look down at my stats afterwards, and it's sort of, you're just in that grey area of zone 3 and 4, and your heart rate's jumping all over the place. I think, going out and getting on a bike, jumping in a pool, doing something slightly different, but for a sustained period, can be a really good way of people sort of getting in that zone 2 training. Because
some people might even be a walk.
Yeah,
genuinely
exactly.
might even be like a walk.
Because I remember the first time I sort of started looking at doing anything remotely, even over 5 minutes of work at one time, and they said you have to work in zone 2. Walking was where I was at, and you're still making, it feels like you're not sort of progressing, but, it's kind of one of those classic lines of trust the process, trust, in that, and things can drop down, I think, and you can progress super quickly. So let's sort of fast forward, because obviously, you and I've had conversations like this, over lots, you joined a running community in Glasgow.
Yeah, that's right.
So how did you find that community? Did they find you?
Well, it was a bit like I actually had, once I started to take it more seriously and I realized I was going to target, the next race I was going to target was the same race that I did the previous year, but I was going to do the half marathon. So I'd contacted an online coach, a guy called Derek, and then sort of contacted him and was doing all my coaching through him, much the same as I'm doing for other people now. Never met the guy, just, recommended through a few different people. This guy, he's got Scottish records and he's a great sort of runner, and, absolutely fell in love with it. Loved having a coach and getting through the processes of him, like talking me through what this meant, what that meant. And just like, to be honest, the learning curve was like literally like that, it was a lot of the similar things that I was doing, but he probably just like fast tracked my like progress, 10x, like just giving me the right things. And I sort of said to him, listen, I'm doing these interval sessions. I'm doing these tough half marathon sessions, which at the time were like pretty brutal. So I'm struggling to do this, like on my own. Like I want to go and do it in the best will in the world, but like I'm really missing the camaraderie side of like the rugby, sort of like getting together, mutual shared pain. And he was like, oh, well, my father, he's a running coach and he does this local group, the Belly Houston Roadrunners. So I was like, oh, right, okay, so what's the crack? And he was like, well, it's a free to go to group. But basically, I'll just program in what their sessions are because his dad does it. So I know what the sessions are, and you can go and do your hard work there. And for stuff like load management, race specific stuff, I'll plan it. So I just went, all right, that's brilliant. So I went down. Never been to a run club before, never knew what any of this stuff was like, and just like absolutely loved it. And I got back that same sense of satisfaction that I got from, like, say, previously going to sports clubs like rugby clubs and things like that, where you actually you go down, you do the thing. It is very hard. You sit and have a post reflection. You talk about it. You have a crack about it. Some weeks you're good, some weeks you're bad. And it's just sort of to have those people to sort of carry along, really. I just absolutely loved that. So just while I was in that club, I just got like heavily involved with trying to, like, from my rugby background and rugby coaching background, I love doing stuff, helping people out. If I don't know something, I'll help them. and always ask loads of questions and stuff. So went and started helping them out with doing little things, little warm-ups, little bits of the sessions, and they were always asking for people to volunteer. So sort of volunteered to go and help them with their coaching stuff, which was great.
Much similar journey you found out here in Dubai since you got out here. Finding a group, getting involved, and progressing it to where we are now, which is incredible. Talk us through the emotion, the sort of the nervousness of joining a group. Because I know I've felt that way before when you're doing something which is remarkably out of your comfort zone. It's one thing that you can find something, a real hobby, and you want to express that, and you want to do that in a group, but actually converting that into action and going and joining a crew, because there could I'm sure there are people there who are going sub 3:30 marathons. Yeah. It's the same thing. You're thinking, oh my God, these people are ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, I feel a bit out of place. How did that feel for you turning up?
At session one, I mean, I think I'll probably say the same for everyone. Session one, you don't know the lay of the land. You don't know where you're going to park. You don't know what it's like when you meet before. You don't know the general crack. You don't know, at the time, I genuinely didn't know one single person. I remember sitting in my car. I arrived this is probably military brain, but I arrived 45 minutes before, being right, scope out the area, park in the car park, go in, find the door, find the entrance, find the closest toilet. I got all those anxieties out of the way, and then went in. And then just within, obviously, the first session, you just realize that everyone realizes and anticipates. They see you looking like a lost sheep and sort of bring you in. And obviously, if you don't get that, then you're probably at the wrong place. You'll probably find that out straight away. And, that they were just such a welcoming group of people. But yeah, it was just more having that sports in me, the sports sort of drive. And when you go down and you see this one guy, Tony, doing a sort of 15-minute 5K, and his track reps, he's running sub 3-minute kilometer pace. And I'm going, oh, I just want to be I want to be literally like him. I want to be at the front. And then they go, actually, what's your 5K time? Okay. What's your 10K time? Right. It's 50 minutes. Well, actually, you're in group 3. You're not even in the second group. You're in group 3, and then it's obviously just the hunger and desire to go well, actually, I do want to be in group 1. Yeah. And I did not that you don't deserve it, but I want it. You want to drive there, and I think as well that sort of put my own running on a lot. Just to see those guys at the front, and then maybe the next week you sort of hang in group 2 for a little bit. But you get dropped out the back, and you're in there for 6 weeks, sort of dropping back. And then on the 7th week, you're well, I did the full session with group 2. Great. And, you just sort of keep progressing. But I absolutely loved it. And it's almost like gamifying that, where you're right, John there runs a 40-minute 10K. If I can hang with him on this session, I'm a 40-minute 10K guy. But, I didn't quite make rep 8, 9, and 10. I was dead. I was off. Right. Okay. Well, at least I did 80% of the session with him. And, I dropped back to my whatever pace I was doing, and I think that's amazing. I really think that's sort of something that people should do more. Is gamify their running and sort of use others to push them on. Make a little scenario in your head. You want to beat them, whatever. But I mean, it's you against you. But I mean, you're using other sort of factors to sort of make you better.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to be said for for sharing experiences. Sharing great ones and bad ones and everything like that. And I think doing those sorts of sessions, and even doing your easy long runs, whatever, with a group is so beneficial. Just, to have someone almost like a sounding board, as someone who's going through that exact same thing with you. Or like you said, I could come to you and say, I'm going to hang by your heels all session today. And that's my focus today. And that's what the plan is. And if I can't, I can't. It's just, and if I do that, it's a big plus. And if I don't, I can just sort of reflect and say, okay, but I hung with Blair and that first group, that second group for 12 minutes. That's 12 minutes longer than I could ever imagined, 6 months ago. Yeah. And I think as well, we saw this on Wednesday. You saw this yesterday morning. People are, it does gives you the confidence to kind of push yourself out of that comfort zone. Because I think, when you're doing intervals on your own, or when you're doing difficult things on your own, and it is easy to stop, and it is easy to say no or not to really push yourself. And I think doing that shared is a great thing. So let's fast forward. So you've been running with this group for a considerable amount of time. Then you fancied some coming to the sunny lands of the Middle East. I know, obviously, Soph, your wife, she secured work out here. For you, what was your thought coming out here thinking that you were going to be leaving a community where you'd been sort of embedded in running and then coming to the Middle East? What were your thoughts and feelings towards that?
Yeah, I was just like looking out, like outwardly. I sort of put a few messages on like Brits in Dubai group and stuff, and said, "Listen, I'm looking to join a running club." People gave recommendations. There's free ones, there's paid ones, and then when I first came, I sort of was like, right, I need to get myself sorted because I like. So if my wife will say like I'll go absolutely daft if I don't go out and do something, like at least once a day I need to go out and do something. So I was like, I need to find sort of community like-minded people, the same again. So I went out and I tried like 3 or 4 different clubs, and then that's obviously when I stumbled across like the likes of yourself and the rest of the Jameer Johns guys, where I was like, right, you eventually sort of find your tribe sort of thing, and then obviously that was amazing just to and like it really helps you sort of make you feel settled in there. And I know that you sort of felt similar, like where you've just said, right, well, it's good to have these same like-minded people. We're all about the same age, and just like we're just hanging out and having a bit of general crack, and it's just really good. And then obviously pushing each other on to do silly things and runs.
Yeah,
and
I mean, let's talk
been...
about those silly things that 50k, no training. Talk us through that experience.
Yeah. That was on the back.
Very briefly.
That was on the back. So it was actually when I first moved over, I came across in like probably the best running shape of my life. Like I was like real pushing for the half marathon. I had a bad race just before it came out, and then I did it like maybe 2 weeks before I moved out, and I just kept training. Soph was away. She was already over in Dubai, so I just trained so hard, kept running, and then all of a sudden came over here. The week after I arrived, there's a half marathon, entered, definitely shouldn't have entered, pulled up my Achilles a little bit, I got roped into playing a game of rugby, which I shouldn't have played 100%, and then I did my Achilles properly. I couldn't run for 3 months, which then was obviously really tough. I couldn't run properly. And then, then the guys decided that they were going to do ultra spontaneous, which was 50k, down Jumeirah Beach, just one random day, just announced within, 5 days notice or
5
something.
days.
So went and did that, and I'd virtually probably averaged about 3 kilometers a week for about 2 months or something. So it just really wasn't that great, and had a real sort of life lesson that day where I was in my head. But sometimes races, you don't win them, you're just sort of, it's just a battle. You get to the end and
exactly.
It's not really about a time or whatever, but that was a great experience, and then just obviously the rest of the guys have pushed me on to do different things that otherwise I never would have done.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, let's touch on that. Obviously, the Dubai race calendar across running, across triathlons, fitness competitions, it's incredibly busy, and you could find yourself doing something every single week. And then some of the key events that you've done here, what would you say, top three events that you've done since you've been in Dubai, from a sense of enjoyment, let's say?
Yeah. I would say I thoroughly enjoyed going out and doing Ironman 70.3 Muscat. That was probably as hard a physical challenge. I didn't have a good race, as in like nowhere near the performance that I should have done, but I've just thoroughly enjoyed the experience of getting out there in front, like, thousands of people and just going out there. There's a small crew of us, but a small committed crew, and we just had a great time. And it was just great. And then I would probably say we did a community run at Burge to Burge half marathon last year. And that was probably 40 plus guys from Jameer Johns. Obviously you and your wife were there, on their bikes, sort of pacing people and doing bits and bobs. Or sorry, maybe that was the other race perhaps. So I've got mistaken. But anyway, everyone was there. There's 40 plus people from the club. We had a tent after. We went for some drinks and some food after, and just like all round community spirit. I had done a triathlon the day before, so I was pacing the 2-hour group for the club. And I must admit, I barely got round. But basically, we sort of had a great time and, had a good crack. And then I'd probably say next best would probably be, I would say Dubai Marathon last year was great, to have the support of everyone there on your home turf sort of thing. It was a great marathon. Really enjoyed it and definitely do it again.
And that leads nicely in, not that I planned that, what's the plan for the next few races coming up, next few events? What's on the calendar for you?
For me, well, as of yesterday, I signed up to do Ashman Triathlon next week, but it's not really so. I'm just going at it with a sort of everything. Same as I'm coaching with people, I always have A goal races, B goal races, and then sort of C's, which is races that you might enter for the crack. You might get a medal, you might pace someone, you might have clients running at it, so you're sort of just having, getting there. So the whole sort of thing is leading up to this T100 triathlon in November, and November 17th. So it has been a full season out with no specific triathlon races. So we have got Mamzar 1 triathlon at Mamzar Island in Sharjah. So that's the week before, the week after. But I figured, well, just to get the experience, get the miles in the legs, I don't necessarily have to race Ajman. I can maybe put it in at 80%, go through the motions, take the kit, run through it. And at the end of the day, like I always tell people, it's all training. So, if you're doing that or you're doing a brick workout or something, you can just treat it as training, for something that's maybe a bigger goal. And then, we're going for redemption at Dubai Marathon this year. So hopefully some big time-based goals. Hopefully if I get there, depending, once we get this triathlon out the way, it'll be all systems going running.
Yeah,
so
exactly. It's interesting. Good. You make an interesting point there, though, that, you're working towards, let's talk about the triathlon side of things. You're working towards T100, but then entering races and not necessarily looking to, break the world record or, smash a PB within that time, but to kind of use it as a training experience. That's something which you've implemented for me in my training for the marathon in May, is that enter Burj to Burj, enter these different races to get that experience of sort of, even just the experience of going and picking up a bib and, putting your paper clips on and being in and amongst people and around other racers. I think racecraft isn't necessarily the term, but it's that kind of thing. It's that experience of being amongst others and in those environments. Because for sure, new racers, new beginners to runners, or whatever it may be, I think you can sometimes train so much in isolation, or even if you train with a group, but you train so much with in a very fixed environment, and then you find yourself on a start line with a couple hundred other people banging shoulders, and then they say go, and someone stops in front of you, someone's moving around. I think that could even throw you because you've been so consistent with your paces. So I think it's interesting that it's a good thing that you're doing these let's call them warm-ups, do you know what I mean? Until the main event.
Yeah, just to run through that. It's like the same as you would do in rugby, do a game-based scenario. Put yourself through, maybe you've got 2 teams, maybe you sort of run one against the other, and you treat it as sort of full buna, but maybe just dial it back a little bit on the aggressiveness. And things are going to go wrong in races, and then the more races you do, the more you learn to adapt. And one day out there I'll put together the perfect marathon, but I think most marathon people say that's you maybe get 1 in 5 or something, you'll dial together perfectly, so you might as well just have a few more goes at it. We're not going to break world records, unless you are unless you're someone who's super elite, but you just want to do the best that you can do. So, and then at the end of the day, you want to do well, but it's not that serious. It's not like your family are still proud of you that you went out and did that race. You should still be proud of what you did in terms of your achievement. Even if you go and have the worst day and you did half a marathon, you had to drop out, whatever, the journeys, maybe the training or what you've done, it's you should still be proud of what you've done and just go out and try and enjoy it, because life can be miserable if you don't go out and try and enjoy things. You know what I mean?
And that leads to my last question, and this will put you on, not necessarily put you on the spot, but if you had to give your, and I know this may open you up to talk for another hour, but if you were to give your very short form philosophy on running and your experience in running, what would that be?
Do it more and enjoy it. So that's obviously too short, but I'll give you more context. But there's always sort of more things you can do. You can do more mileage, you can do more speed work, you can do more specific race stuff, you can do more races. Most people, although they think that they're probably overtrained, they're probably like nowhere near. If there's, as long as you're training correctly and you're building yourself up smartly, you'll be able to sort of stack up more load, especially as the weeks, months, and years stack on top of each other. Endurance is a long game, and the more stacks you can put on one another, the further you're going to be along the road. Obviously, that comes along with do it more, that do it what you enjoy. So I hear quite a lot of people, this actually irks me a bit, where they're like, oh yeah, I've got to go out and do this suffering because it may whatever, but I don't really enjoy doing these intervals and stuff, and they're putting themselves through stuff they don't really enjoy. I'm like, well, what part of it do you enjoy? Do you actually enjoy it? Ask yourself the important questions. If you don't enjoy it, doesn't always have to be running. Maybe that isn't your thing. Maybe it could be like biking, or maybe it could be something like something, I don't even know, skiing. I don't know, something. Do more stuff you enjoy. So obviously, if you do enjoy running, which you probably, if you are listening to this 31 minutes into our longest ever podcast, you probably do enjoy running. But do more of what you enjoy, and if you do love it, you can sort of get more out of it. That's what I would say. And that doesn't necessarily mean go and hammer it every single run. That obviously means be specific, and keep going.
Good stuff. Well, you normally do this, but I will be doing this on your behalf. If you want to explore your running journey here in the Middle East, or in the UK, or wherever you may be in the world, Blair is your man. Like, he will single-handedly transform your programs. He's contactable all hours, and I'm not blowing smoke. You're generally one of the most passionate people I know about running, and you will also be so passionate about helping people to achieve their goals. So guys, reach out. Every platform you're available on. Jump in on socials, comment, like, subscribe, do all the good stuff. But no, I hope you've all picked something out of this Get to Know Your Coach series.
Thank you very much, Ed, for hosting this podcast. It means a lot to me, mate. And we're looking forward to you smashing it at the Rob Burrow Marathon in Leeds next year. So let's go.
Cheers, mate.